Hey gang, what's going on? This is Juan from the Byte team here to talk about WWE SummerSlam 2008. I hadn't watched it since its original airing in 08, so going into it I was a little worried. A lot of times when you go back and watch older shows, you're worried is something cringier than you remember. But no, I gotta say overall, before I delve into specific matches and segments, it was a pretty good show. Not amazing by any way, but nothing too cringy, and overall a pretty positive experience going down memory lane. So right off the bat, we get treated to a video package talking about, what's happening between La Familia, Edge, Vicky Guerrero, The Undertaker. Really good context because, of course, that's one of the big issues when you go back and watch older pay-per-views. If you care about the storylines, maybe you don't really know exactly where you're at. But we get treated to that, which was really nice and made me really miss Edge and made me realize how much I missed him, I should say. And the other immediate thing I noticed is that the set was unique. And that is something that we don't have anymore. For the majority, we get a modified Raw SmackDown set where they change the animations, the video graphics, but it's still the same format. So it was nice to go back and see this older show that had a very much unique feel to it. And the other change is, of course, that Taz was in the commentary position. I got to say, it was a pretty good chemistry. Good old JR, Jim Ross was there, which, easily one of the greatest play-by-play commentators of all time. But getting to the specific matches, first we opened up with Jeff Hardy taking on MVP. Much like Edge, watching this made me realize how much I missed Jeff Hardy's last theme. So you see the writing on the wall. Anyway, talking about the match itself, number one, I think it was very solid, different from what I thought I would get because I did not remember this match at all. Jeff Hardy matches tend to be way more faster paced, high flying, but MVP throughout the match definitely kept grounding Jeff Hardy, using a lot of submission moves, and I love that because usually it seems boring whenever the bad guy tries to do that during a match, but I didn't mind that here. I think it was very good. It reminded me also how great of a character MVP is. Although I'm not a great fan of his wrestling style, I think the contrast between Jeff Hardy and MVP was really good throughout this match. I'm not sure if it's actually true or not. The commentators pointed out that this was Jeff Hardy's first SummerSlam since SummerSlam 2001. This is, of course, nearing his WWE career before going into TNA for a very long time. And yeah, the match ended with some interference happening with Shelton Benjamin, and then MVP hit the drive-by kick for the win. I think it was a really good opener and just made me realize, and it's something that you may hear me say throughout this pay-per-view, the match pacing is really different in 2008. MVP gets the win. I think it's pretty cool, and it was a really good match to start out. Then we get treated to the question, social media is present. What will happen? Will Edge and Vicky Guerrero divorce? Oh my God. We don't know what to expect. That's the never-ending question. And then we move on to the next match. We have an intergender tag team match. The team of Glamour, Santino Marella, and Beth Phoenix taking on Mickie James, who is the women's champion at the time, and Kofi Kingston, who was the Intercontinental champion at the time. And this was a winner-take-all scenario. So the female could face the male, vice versa, and whichever team won the match would win everything. So if Kofi pinned Santino, they would retain, but if Santino pinned Kofi, Beth would also become the new women's champion. In this match, I really liked it for so many things. It was probably the match I was looking forward to watching the least, but it's the one that I enjoyed one of the most. Why? Because, number one, it reminded me what great chemistry Beth Phoenix and Santino Marella had, because Santino is the comedic character, but it works so well, and especially at this point in time when he was supposed to be, bad guy heel before he went all way too much babyface. I think his character was perfect for what it was. And the match overall was a really good combination between action and comedy, because it's not like we only got the comedy. We got Mickie James and Beth Phoenix pulling off some moves, Kofi Kingston showing off his athleticism, Santino Marella got a couple of moves, and it reminded me a lot of Enzo Amore from NXT, because Santino, like Enzo, doesn't really get a lot of offense, but his character doesn't need to, and it shouldn't, because it would be kind of weird for this comedic character that is very afraid, goes over to Beth whenever he's in danger, and then he gets a lot of of offense, that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then we get the Glam Slam on Mickie James at the conclusion of the match. So Glamour become the Intercontinental and Women's Champion. Now next, we get treated to a video package of the feud happening between Chris Jericho and the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, which I mentioned in one of the previous podcast episodes. I'll post it in the description box below. We had a question regarding my favorite heel during the PG era. Easily Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho got away with so much stuff, and this pay-per-view was one of the highest points of his character with what he did later on. So yeah, we got an in-ring segment happening between Shawn Michaels, Chris Jericho, Shawn Michaels' wife, and the never-ending question of, is Shawn Michaels going to retire based on everything that's been happening in the feud with Chris Jericho? You know, the eye incident, sorry for hitting the microphone, and then we get Chris Jericho coming out saying, no, I want you to say that you're retiring because of me. Now, in other feuds, traditionally the babyface would say, no, I'm not retiring because of you. It's because of years of abuse and all these things. But then Shawn Michaels sort of goes, yeah, you're part of the reason that that's happening. And the thing keeps scaling up to the point where it looks like Shawn Michaels is about to leave the ring and then moves out of the way, and Jericho punches Shawn Michaels' wife. Legitimately, it's not, you know, they show the replays. He hits her right in the lips. Her lips are swollen afterwards. I remember when this happened back in the day, it was overwhelming. Like, oh my God, WWE's going Attitude Era again, and all these articles started coming out just because of this segment. Now, I know there's some podcast stating that maybe she wasn't supposed to be hit that hard, but it worked out in the end, and it was so personal. And the thing that I loved about it so much was two things. Number one, Jericho's face, where he wasn't the cowardly heel after punching her. He had this look of, I wasn't supposed to do that, but I did it. And if anything, that's going to help me now. So, I meant to do that now. I meant to do that totally, even though it was an accident. And in the second part, it showed that for all the complaints that we sometimes have of having in-ring segments happening in a pay-per-view, when they're good, they're great in a pay-per-view. Now, the next match, we have an ECW Championship match between Matt Hardy, the challenger, and the champion Mark Henry. For me, this was when ECW should have just closed down. This was a terrible point. I mean, everything from the Silver Championship, the fact that the championship was silver and not gold, just so many things pointed out the fact that the WWE maybe just didn't care about ECW too much. And this match was a complete throwaway. Before the match even started, the entrances were about twice as long, if not longer, than the match itself. Matt Hardy hits a twist of fate about 30 to 40 seconds into the match. Tony Atlas interferes, and then the match ends. DQ. I remember I thought back in the day that they were going to restart the match somehow or something, but no, that was pretty much it. DQ, and we're on to the next match. So I can't even say what I thought about it because nothing happened other than a twist of fate, and Tony Atlas is awesome. Now, the next match, we have a World Heavyweight Championship match. The champion at the time, CM Punk, taking on a former champion, John Bradshaw Layfield. This is a very personal feud as far as I remember, not just in a character standpoint, but even CM Punk later went on to speak in his documentary that he didn't have a lot of friends backstage or people that expected him to be a good champion. So even the commentators throughout the match are saying, this is his opportunity to prove himself. This is where he can demonstrate to the veterans that he can run with the big boys and that he is not a transitional champion. So it's funny because we know what happened years after with the pipe bomb incident and all that, but this was a really good point where him as a champion, he was getting next to no exposure. He was a World Heavyweight Champion, but Triple H being WWE Champion was pretty much the primary focus as far as I remember. And I love the fact that this match was a very old school match, I guess you could say, where it was very much the bad guy beating down on the good guy, but the good guy's getting his offense, he's getting a couple of moves, and just sort of proving that he can run with him. And then CM Punk eventually wins the match, and that's it. It's I can't exactly pinpoint any parts of the match that are amazing, or incredible spots, but this match wasn't about that. It wasn't about having a 5-star match. It was about proving, as I've said it about 6 to 8 times here, and then CM Punk won the match. We have Triple H defending the championship against the Great Khali. Now, I'm not going to talk here about the Great Khali, and from a career standpoint, I'm going to specify just based on this match, it was probably one of his best performances. I know that's saying a lot, simply because I think Triple H did an excellent job of hiding Great Khali's greatest weakness, which is wrestling, I guess you could say. But it worked. You know, the video package also definitely sold the story. I know that back in the day, and even if you look back on Raw or SmackDown, Great Khali always stood out, and not necessarily in a good way. But everything from the commentators to the video packages, they tried really hard to make you believe in this character. And I'm assuming the younger audience definitely bought into him. You know, of course, we got the "You Can't Wrestle" chants with the Great Khali. But Triple H, man, leave it to Triple H to pull off a great match out of absolutely nothing. You know, the match ended with the pedigree, and Triple H retained. And there's not much. It's the same thing with the other match. This was more of an illustration that Triple H is the guy to beat. You know, even the video package stated, you know, the Great Khali has never beaten Triple H, but then Triple H says, yeah, but the opposite hasn't happened either. So you can't really, talk about this. You haven't faced me before. And it was interesting because seeing Triple H as a babyface champion is always a weird thing to me. You know, I always think of Triple H when Evolution happened, all these things, the handlebar mustache Triple H. So seeing him in this form was definitely something different. Not something that I enjoyed too much. Like when Triple H was a lot on SmackDown, that was sort of my SmackDown Zero watching face, although that hasn't changed too much. But overall, I gotta say, it was a good match. It could have been way better, but yeah. We have John Cena taking on Batista. No championships on the line here. This is the first time this match has ever happened on WWE television. These are the two guys that, all the way in WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, which came out in 2005, the cover was these two superstars, one representing Raw, one representing SmackDown, because they were the future of the company. So fast forward from then to 2008, and they are finally facing each other off. So this is much like the CM Punk thing. It's like proving yourself. This is who is the better one of the two, who is the future of the company. If you fast forward, we know who's still in the company actively and who's not. But little tidbits about this match. First off, maybe you started watching WWE recently. This will remind you that the Attitude Adjustment was at one point called the FU, and that was just weird for me to hear that, because when the transition happened with the name change, I remember I thought to myself, I'm never going to get used to Attitude Adjustment. But I did, and now going back, it's sort of really weird. And then Batista was definitely the fan favorite going into this match. And just the little details that, we had one night stand up until this point. We had a ton of matches or stipulations or situations where we had if Cena wins, we riot. But in this match, you didn't really get the "Let's go Cena, Cena sucks" chants. People were very much into the overall experience, cheering for Cena, cheering for Batista, and they were really into this match. And one thing it made me realize is just how long Cena has been doing the top rope leg drop. I always think that that's like a brand new move, even though he does it year after year. And it's a move that I always think to myself, we complain about top rope leg drops being horrible for the spine, yet Cena's a guy that keeps doing that. So at some point down the line, I'm assuming that's going to have to stop. It was an overall very good match. I love the fact that the match pacing was a little bit faster than Triple H versus Khali and Punk versus JBL. Those two matches were definitely more slowed down, and here they sped everything up, and the crowd also helped. The crowd was so into everything that any punch, any kick, any power bomb was just exceptional. And I love the conclusion of the match where Batista counters the top rope leg drop into the power bomb. Cena kicks out, and then Batista does a second power bomb. And traditionally, you're thinking to yourself, well, he kicked out of the first one. He's got to kick out of three. And just like that, out of nowhere, Batista's the winner of the match. No championships on the line. And it kept progressing. It wasn't about handshakes afterwards. It was simply a very solid match. Now, getting to the main event of the show, the match that definitely made the show go from okay to good or very good. We'll see when I get to the end, is the Hell in a Cell match between The Undertaker, who's the Hell in a Cell master, if you will, taking on the rated R superstar, the ultimate opportunist, Edge. The man that at this point in his career is by himself. He had La Familia, which consisted of, the Major Brothers, Zack Ryder, Kurt Hawkins, Bam Neely, Vicky Guerrero, and Chavo Guerrero. And then we had this match happen. Edge is pretty much by himself. La Familia doesn't care about him anymore, and they want The Undertaker to beat the living crap out of him. And this match was extremely physical. It is, I guess, as far as a PG-rated Hell in a Cell match can go, or even more recent matches, they've kind of gotten close to this amount of violence, considering, no chair shots to the head and all that. But it's good. The chair shots were to the back. They used the steel steps. There were plenty of table spots. And one thing that I really liked is that they used the cameras as an excuse to bash somebody over the head. And similar to other matches, this was another proving ground match, but in so many different layers. Not just does Edge has to prove that he's not afraid of The Undertaker, he has to prove that he's better than The Undertaker in a Hell in a Cell match. He has to prove to the Familia that he doesn't need them. He doesn't need Vicky Guerrero. He only needs Edge. And building up to this, of course, they had the whole Mick Foley situation where Mick Foley's like, bring the Edge that took me to the limit at WrestleMania. And all these things were played out in a very excellent way throughout the majority of the match, because it seemed like The Undertaker was the guy getting all the punishment. I mean, everything from spears through the cell, spears through the announcer table. He was getting all this, but he was still getting back up. So you saw the frustration building in Edge, hitting him with the camera and all these things. And then at the end of the match, everything sort of went back to Edge. He got a taste of his own medicine, where The Undertaker hit him with a concerto, hit him with the camera, and then hit him with the tombstone for the victory. So if you had to watch any match in particular in the show, it would definitely have to be the Hell in a Cell match. Now, of course, the match didn't just end there. The Undertaker is walking out. You think the show's about to end, but he sees that Edge is still conscious. So he goes back into the ring. He sets up a ladder and then chokeslams Edge from 2 ladders through the ring, and then effectively kills him by setting him on fire. And then there were a ton of visual effects happening through the process, which I remember SmackDown during this point in time, they were experimenting more with becoming a cinematic show, not just a wrestling show or sports entertainment show. They had a lot of weird camera angles. So this was part of the norm back around that time. The visual effects I could have definitely done without, but it was a cool conclusion, I guess, and it definitely showed a closure to at least that show. Edge lost the match, and he got what he deserved. So overall, I gotta say, SummerSlam 2008 was a very good show. If there was anything to nitpick, I'd say that the matches were a little bit too similar. If you look at the pacing of the matches, with the exception of the mixed tag team match, everything was sort of more slow-paced in this. Even the Jeff Hardy MVP match. And as I was mentioning in the Hell in a Cell match, I think this show was simply about showing progress in the storyline. With Triple H and Khali, it's like, I can conquer that. With CM Punk, it was like, I deserve to be the top guy. With Batista, it was representing that I'm the future of the company. With The Undertaker, it's representing, I am the veteran and I am simply better than you. So it was these little details that maybe when you go back, out of context, it seems a little bit dull because, we had interferences, we had disqualifications where maybe they shouldn't have been there, but it was an enjoyable show. The contrast from 2008 compared to now, I would say, is definitely that the matches, at least in this show, were way more slow-paced as opposed to a pay-per-view now, where they would kick out of a ton of finishers, sell moves a lot less. So if you're going down memory lane, is SummerSlam 2008 worth a watch? I'd say sure. There are probably better options within that year, but this show gives you a little bit of everything. Guys that are still in the company like John Cena, guys that seem to have a ton of potential like MVP, and then you got to see great personal storyline develop like HBK and Chris Jericho, and guys like even Khali could at some point have a decent match. And Triple H was a babyface champion, something that for some people may be really hard to picture. So thank you to Mr. Cody Collier and FreshToast for recommending me into reviewing SummerSlam 2008. If you have any recommendation, or if you watched this and you thought it was good or SummerSlam was terrible, let us know by leaving a comment below. Subscribe to the channel, and remember to check out the podcast every single Tuesday right here. So until next time, hope you like the review, and we'll be back with a ton more stuff right here on Byte That.